It's the talk of the town, Grand Rapids. Time to talk. Archie Holloman on GRTV Grand Rapids and WKTV Iowa Kick.
Hello, welcome to Time to Talk. I'm RG Holloman, and today is February 10th, 2016, which means Valentine's Day is coming up very soon. And as usual, we want to celebrate love for Valentine's Day, and we have a very special Valentine's couple. We'd like to welcome Mr. and Mrs. Allen and Mary Beth Beamer. It's so good to have you both here today on
Thank
Time
you for
to
having
Talk.
us. We appreciate it.
Yes.
Thank you for being my Valentine's couple. The Beamers have been married for 20 years, and they have been together for 23 years, and they have quite a love story to tell. And maybe a lot of people have seen it on YouTube and on the news and information going all over the world, and that's because Mr. Beamer has Alzheimer's, but he's still very much in love with Mrs. Beamer, and she's certainly in love with him. And they're here to share their love story with us today. And your love story goes all the way back 23 years. Tell us how you met.
It does. Do you remember how we met?
In school, in high school.
We weren't in high school.
Not,
You were teaching high
We
school.
not at that time.
Okay.
But we both worked. I worked with special needs kids, and Alan worked at the high school, and my kids would go over and they would work in the cafeteria. And so I would go over with the kids, and I still remember the exact day that I saw him and asked the custodial lady, "Who is he?" And she said, "Oh, we all like him."
That's how we met. Do you remember any of that, babe?
Makes me proud.
Okay. That's wonderful. Now, Mrs. Beamer, you decided to make a video, and it was the very first video you ever made. And you made a video about Mr. Beamer and what you both are dealing with. Tell us about that.
It had been a bad weekend. I come from a very close family. I'm the youngest of 6. My father's 98. My mother passed away a year ago, but we're very close-knit. It had been a bad weekend, so I called them and I said, "Please come get me. I can't take care of me, and I can't take care of him this weekend." We had put our dog down, and that was one of our memories that we had got together, and it meant the world to me. So they came and got me, and we spent the weekend there, and my dad and all my brothers and sisters helped me and helped us, and then drove us back home on Sunday. And when we sat down, someone came to visit us, and they stayed for 6 minutes, and when they left, he looked at me and he just said, "Mayor, what did I do wrong?" And so at that moment I thought, my gosh, I really stink at technology, but I thought, you know what, the best thing I can do is maybe to just make a video to put it out for like 5 people, just 5 people that have been with us forever, but they just can't get it, whether it bothers them or whether they've known somebody with Alzheimer's, I don't know. So I hit a button and I recorded it, and then when I was done, at the same time he and I viewed it, I hit the button and I showed it to him, and he has problems with his eyes because he's visual variant. But he listened to it, and I said, "Alan, can I put it out there?" And he said, "Mayor, you go ahead and put it out." He gave me the okay, which is still what we do. We still ask each other and figure things out. And so we put it out there, and after we put it out, it just stuff started coming in from New Zealand. I mean, we had 20,000 emails. We had 12,000 friend requests.
Wow.
Cards, people from New Zealand, from anywhere, and not just Alzheimer's, but people that have had brain cancer and that, and feeling the isolation that he feels, because in a day he can't read anymore, he can't write, he can't drive, he can't use the remote on the TV, he can't talk on the telephone. So isolation is something that he knows a lot of. And I have to work. I work.
Okay.
And someone stays with him. But I feel for him so badly. I mean, I can't imagine not being able to hop in a car or being able to, he loved to read. I mean, the Civil War, he loved that stuff.
Okay.
So
Yes.
my talk with him after that went out and it started, I just said, Beam, what do you want to do? And he still, there's all different stages of Alzheimer's, as you know, and he flops in and flops out of them. But on a good day, he said to me, Mayor, my new goal, I'm terminally ill, I'm going to die, but my new goal is to help as many as we can. And when we're looking at it, we're looking at the Alzheimer's patient. What can we do to help people understand that right around the corner from them is somebody who has this dreadful disease? And I know their lives go on. I remember all the fun we had in our lives, getting in the car and driving places, but just to maybe make them think that if they could just take 5 minutes or a half an hour maybe, because he can't, his brain works so much harder than ours. So for people to come and stay for an hour, you don't have to do that. But we've pretty much, it's hard to say, but we're pretty much, both of us, are isolated. People don't know what to say or what to do.
And this video has helped increase a lot of awareness about
has.
Alzheimer's, hasn't it? Let's go to that video now. We're going to go to that video and let people see what you have been talking about. And then also I understand that you've received, it's gone viral. And
when they called me about it going viral, when they called me to say, your video's gone viral, we'd like to do something with it, the first thing that came to my mind, this tells you how I am about technology, was I said, oh my God, do I have to change my password? Because I'm not good with my passwords, and I thought, then I have a virus, and I'm like, oh God, no. That's how I am techie.
Well, you were able to manage and got it uploaded and
I
everything,
did.
so that was a good thing. So you're watching Time to Talk, and we're talking to Mr. and Mrs. Beamer, and we're sharing their love story, which is a very precious love story for Valentine's Day. And let's go to that video now.
Good morning. I thought I'd take a few minutes. We've had a rough couple days, and I just wanted to put this out there. My husband is Alan Beamer, Alzheimer's, visual variants from playing the lovely game of football, but we don't need to get into that. What we need to get into is this is basically for our family and friends, and what I would like you to know is what Alan feels. So that's where we're going to go. Beam,
Yeah.
you have Alzheimer's. What do you want people to know about Alzheimer's?
It's a one of the meanest things I've ever seen in my life.
Okay. Now, one of the most important questions we have is how do you feel, or what do you want from your family and friends? What would you ask of them?
Well, when my friends, one of my biggest friends is my wife.
Okay. But what do you want your friends to know out there about Alzheimer's? What do you need?
Just need to know that I'm the same old person, and I wish that people, all of my friends, could come up and just talk to me just like they did before, and
This is hard.
play a little joke around.
Do you feel as though they're afraid of you?
Yeah, I know they're afraid of me.
Do you feel like people talk around you and don't talk to you?
Yeah, they do. I don't like that either, but all my friends are very high intelligent, and it's so amazing that when it comes to just, when you talk about it, it's just yeses and no's and no and maybe, and it's a yes, or that's all it is. And I don't, if I didn't keep talking,
They don't have anything to say to you, you don't think?
No one would have anything to say.
I know this is hard, honey, but I mean, I'm just trying to get it out there. I feel so bad for you. Anything else you would like your friends to know?
Well, listen, I love them. I wish they'd come over, and they don't have to stay for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, but they don't stay 5 minutes. And so, I would love it if they came over and they stayed over for a while, and we could talk about what's really happening behind the scenes.
Do you like to talk about the fact that you have Alzheimer's, or would you just want to ignore the fact when you talk with people?
Well, I would rather just ignore it, really. I would.
Okay. Well, that's something they need to know, because I don't think people feel too comfortable. However, I think one of the biggest things we want them to know is the fact that we're not comfortable with it either, but we live it every day. We can't get away from it. So you may not feel comfortable coming to see Alan, and it may break your heart. But if you truly loved him or loved us, you can take a few minutes out of your day, your busy days, and I know they're normal busy days. I remember them. And come see him. Is that all we need to say, Beam?
I think so, honey.
Okay.
Yes.
And we love them all, don't we?
We love them all. And for the ones that were here, to stop in and say hello, God bless you.
Okay. And goodbye. Thank you, everybody, for listening.
Yes.
Taken by Mrs. Mary Beth Beamer of her husband, Mr. Alan Beamer. And we're so honored to have the Beamers here with us today to celebrate their love story. That was a very powerful video.
Thank you. Thank
Yes,
you.
yes. And we want you to know, if you would like to wish the Beamers a happy Valentine's Day, you can do that in the right now because they'll be with us just for the first half of our show. So our live call-in number is 616-459-4881. That's 616-459-4881. Then coming up a little later, we have Joy Spahn, who is the Regional Director of the Alzheimer's Association right here in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and serving West Michigan. The two of you have quite a love story. Mr. Beamer, what did you like about Mrs. Beamer when you met her?
She was pretty hot.
All right.
Big funny, big
I
funny.
can tell you that. And then, of course, immediately, right with it, is I noticed, even at that younger, tender age, she listened to me.
Mm-hmm. Okay. She listened to you.
She listened to me.
Okay.
And did things with what she may had read or what else, but she was constantly helping. She wasn't afraid. So many of our friends.
Are we sticking, honey, are we going back to that, or are we sticking with, remember when you first met me? Can you remember that?
When
What
I
did
first,
you, yes. Other than, of course, you said I was hot, and you can say it again if you'd like.
well,
What did you like about me?
I liked everything about you.
Aw.
And we had times where, of course, she's pretty headstrong,
Okay.
and so
Like that too, though.
we
That hasn't changed.
Okay.
and we
Good. And what did you like about Mr. Beamer when you
let's see.
first met him?
When I first met him, what I liked about him was, number one of the same things I still love about him today, even with Alzheimer's. He makes me laugh every day.
Okay.
He listens to me. That is a struggle right now with the Alzheimer's. I miss that.
Yes.
I think probably just before we actually fell in love, he was my friend.
Okay. Good
You
friends.
know,
Well,
yeah.
let's show some of your pictures of your
Okay.
family.
Sure.
And different things like that. Your children and your wedding pictures and your family. Now, these are your parents?
That's my parents. My mother passed away a year ago. My father is 98. He was in World War II, a Marine, Purple Heart. He is still around. They were married
68 years and instilled very good values. And up until the day my mom died, my dad could finish her sentences and my mom could finish theirs. They're just
Okay.
the most wonderful people.
Okay.
That is our oldest. That is Shelby and her husband Jeff.
Okay. Wonderful.
Grandchildren.
All right.
Blessings, grandchildren.
Grandchildren.
We have Connor on the right and Cody on the left, the apples of our eyes.
Okay.
So,
All right.
Who'd have thought?
that is, oh my gosh. Ooh, that's going back to when Beam had hair. And I was a little thinner and a lot younger. That is our wedding day.
Oh, it's
Wonderful, wonderful day. Very simple wedding, but beautiful.
Okay.
Oh boy, that was
Who's
back.
that hot couple?
That was back to a dance that we went to together. And I still remember, it's funny, every picture you show has memories, really good
Okay.
memories.
Great.
Meet my family.
All right.
They are the best family that anybody could ask for. Each and every one
And
of
they're
them,
still very supportive. of
very
you.
supportive, even more so now. They've always been there. My mom instilled that in them. But at any time, if I needed something, my father, each one of them takes turns staying with my
Okay.
dad so he doesn't have to stay home
Great.
in the house by himself. But every one of them is there for us.
Okay.
It's a good old Hollander.
That's it. And
I-
that is
And that Hollander is right in me, too.
where you
All
go.
right.
There is, that is in Jamaica.
Okay.
Yep, just another one of our wonderful memories.
Okay.
There is the youngest.
Okay.
That is Stacy, and Stacy will be expecting her first child on Alan's birthday
Oh.
on May 17th, a little boy.
Okay.
That's close.
Yeah.
Closer and
And that's
closer.
another one of us.
Okay.
Closer.
And another one. It's amazing how you dig through the pictures and you still don't have enough. Dancing, and he really stinks at dancing. So the laughing is probably because he stepped on my feet or dropped me when dipping me.
I may believe.
You did a good job.
What are some of the challenges that you face, Mary Beth?
The challenges that
And that maybe also Mr. Beamer?
that I guess the challenges, if we were to go with the challenges that we face for both of us, would be the change in our relationship. You know, when you go from being best friends to Alan taking care of the finances and pretty much being there for everything. I mean, I can't tell you the stuff he's got me through. He's got me through a lot of stuff, and I've gotten him through a lot of stuff. So each day is a little different. I've never kept a secret from him in my entire life. I've never kept anything from him, but due to anxiety with Alzheimer's and that, there's things I can't tell him. So the internal struggle of knowing something and not being able to share it with him, because I know if I do share it with him, it will upset him. There's a lot of things that each day we lose a little bit more of. Some days you see the spark. I mean, even if you look in his eyes, he has the Alzheimer's eyes. He's wandering away from me.
And that has to be very, very difficult for both of you.
Yes, it is.
And Alan, Mr. Allen, it seems like you do what you can to help, to support Mary Beth as well,
Anything I can
to
do.
try to make things easy for her.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He does. And with that, he has a lot of struggles, and so he still has that, and I want people to know, because there are so many stages. You know, some people could be looking at us right now. I never thought we'd be at this stage. Some people that are Alzheimer's could be looking at us right now and going, God, they're so blessed. And we know we're blessed. I know the path. I know where it's headed. I didn't first accept this very well. I just couldn't believe it could happen to us. But I've seen the path that we're headed on. So for us, we can either wake up each day and we can say, oh, God, how can you do this to us? Or we can get up each day, put our feet on the ground and say, another memory will be made. Our old memories will always be there for me. They will not always be there for him,
Okay.
but they will always be, and we still have more to make.
How did you find out that Mr. Beamer that the two of you had to deal with Alzheimer's?
Started to see really strange things. I do believe it's been going on for quite a while with him. Alan he has quite a sense of humor, so he's always covered everything up. But when he retired, things started to show up like, and he'd laugh about it, putting his groceries in another lady's cart while she was pushing it, and things that would really, his driving was getting bad, things that were really starting to bother me. So we went to an eye doctor, and the eye doctor said he does have cataracts starting up, but I don't think that's the problem. It continued, so we went back to the eye doctor, and I said, can we, if I have to pay, just please remove the cataracts. So we had the cataracts removed. That didn't fix it. He then went to an eye doctor in which they called and said, he said he was blind. I needed to get him to a neuro-ophthalmologist. We do all our work down here in Grand Rapids with St. Mary's. They're very good with us. So we came down here and we visited with him, and he said, no, he's not blind. Then we went to a neuropsychologist, evaluated him for probably about 8 hours in one day, said something's wrong. But we did not receive a diagnosis probably till about 2 years ago. I do believe maybe there's pros and cons on knowing sooner. The day we walked out of St. Mary's and they said he had Alzheimer's was a terrible day. It was a terrible trip home because when you hear Alzheimer's, it's terminal. There's nothing you can do. So that was a terrible day. So in some ways, I'm happy that we didn't know sooner because we still just fought through the rough times and
Did what you could.
did
to be
what we
normal.
could. Yeah.
How would you like people to treat you, Mr. Allen? What do you want people to know?
This is hard for me to say. I wish that my friends, especially, and the family and everybody, Mary Beth is always on a straight keel with me, and so I never have to worry about where Mary Beth's going to be and what she's going to do now. Is she going to screw something up?
He worries. He worries a lot about me. He just wants everybody. I mean, I think he's always been like this. He is my hero.
Okay.
He's always wanted to fix everything for me, and he can't fix it. And so that is the part of him that, I mean, is still, is still intact with him. And when he sees me sad or he sees me upset, I try not to do that in front of him, which is very difficult. I usually try to cry by myself. So all the stuff that's been put out publicly, I'm a very strong person with a lot of pride. I would do anything for him, and this is what he wanted to do. So we're going through with this, but I do have to say it's very difficult for me to be seen out on public TV.
Yes, probably a lot of
bearing
people
my
come
soul.
up to you and everything like
yes,
that.
it is. It's putting it out there, but it's helping many people, and that's what Beam wants to do. That's that's what he wants to leave, his legacy. Just leave this world knowing that he's accomplished something.
Yeah. And it's a very important thing that the both of you are doing. It's a very precious thing because you're opening up your lives to other people, and hopefully it's going to be, I know it's going to be a blessing to other people, and it has been a blessing already for a lot of people. Mr. Allen, you had a chance to go to the NFL.
Yes, I did.
Yeah, who had called you? Was
I had
that Cleveland? And
yes, and the Lions, and I shut that
Well,
one
it was
down.
Cleveland and Dallas.
Was
that
it?
wanted
Was
you.
it? I thought
Cleveland and Dallas
'cause
wanted
I
him.
was always kidding about Lions. I always wanted
The
to play
Lions.
for. Well, once I had a chance to actually to try to be a player for the Lion, I didn't want to be in the Lions. So
Okay.
He did not want to go on.
He
He's,
didn't want to go on.
no, he
Okay.
played football since he was real little, and he wanted to just move
Okay.
on out of that, didn't
Just-
you, babe?
And you
Yep.
actually played football around here in Wyoming.
Exactly.
Right, at Rogers?
Exactly.
Okay, wonderful. And you went to Ferris State?
Exactly.
Yes,
Yep.
okay. And right now, the two of you are living in Big Rapids?
Yes, we
Yes.
live in Big
Okay,
Rapids.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, how can people support you, Mary Beth?
People can support me by supporting him. It's hard for me to come home after working on my feet for 10 hours and know that no one has come to see him or he's just sat by himself. I guess I would have to say there's a lot out there. I could go into so many different things, but for me, actually, since the video has come out even more so, it has drawn a lot of attention. And I want people to know, I have a tremendous amount of friends, we both do, who have been there for us. And, we've lost some friends. It's okay. I want them to know it's okay. And we've gained a lot of friends.
And you still have a wonderful love for each other. And you're still very affectionate.
Cuddle every night on the couch.
Every single night.
He doesn't know where his feet and his head go on the couch. I get him there, we cuddle, don't we,
I
honey?
certainly do. Certainly do.
And so that is wonderful. When is your anniversary? Or when
We
is it
are August 10th.
August
Is ours,
10th.
yes.
Okay.
But it's a crazy story. I'll just tell you a minute. We always celebrate our anniversary he's Hollander, they're very frugal. So we would go to the store and set our watch for 20 minutes, and he'd set his, and then he'd pick out a card for me, and I'd pick out a card for him, and then we'd meet in the middle of the store, and he'd read his card to me, and I'd read my card to him. And then because he's so frugal, we'd put the Hallmark cards back up on the shelf. That was our tradition.
Well, I was a teacher, I didn't have $1 million.
And it just got so we did it every year, and and I miss it.
And all of a sudden it was just
Okay.
weird.
He did take me to dinner, though. I want you to know.
Well,
Always-
I want to say that we were just so honored to have both of you come on Time to Talk today and to drive down from Big Rapids and for your friend to drive you down. We
Thanks,
thank
Tamara.
you for that as well, to come all the way here to Time to Talk to celebrate your very, very special love story. When I saw the two of you on the news, I was like, I have to have them on Time to Talk because that's one of the best Valentine's stories that I've seen and heard in a
We
very
so
long
appreciate it.
That's
time.
wonderful,
And,
Felice.
and what I would like you
we
to
get to
do is I have a bear for Mr. Beamer to give to you and one for you to give to him. I'll have you start first and say something for Valentine's Day for your husband.
I get to give you this one. I just want to tell you that I love you. I'll love you forever. And the diagnosis doesn't mean the end. We still have plenty of memories to be made.
Yes.
I will never, ever leave you. We've talked about things that could happen and things that may need to happen down the road, but whatever does, I'm there for you. And I love you with all my heart. Now, what are you going to tell me? Because you get to give me this one. You better make it good.
I know she's the most important person in my life and has been for a long, long time. I never imagined that she would ever be sticking around with this dumb old quarterback. but there she is, and there she was, and she kept being there.
Forever.
And all of a sudden, I'm sure God said, it's about time you marry that girl.
Oh, you're stuck with me now, man. That was a long time ago. You're stuck with me now.
You're stuck.
Mr. and Mrs. Beamer, thank you so much for being on Time to Talk today.
Thank you very much for having us.
Thanks.
Thank you for watching.
Thank
We'll
you.
be right back with Joyce Spahn, Regional Director of the Alzheimer's Association. And if you have questions or comments for her, our live call-in number is 616-459-4888. 881. You're watching Time to Talk. I'm R.G. Holloman. We'll be right back. Happy Valentine's Day.
Happy Valentine's Day.
RG, RG.
You know I love you. Let's get this off.
For you I give a lifetime of stability. Anything you want of me, nothing is impossible for you. There are no words or ways to show my love, or all the thoughts I'm thinking of. 'Cause this life is no good alone. Since we become one, I've made a change. Everything I do now makes sense. All roads end, all I do is for you. For you I share the cup of love that overflows, and anyone who knows us knows I would change all thoughts I have for you. There is no low or high or in between of my heart that you haven't seen. 'Cause I share all I have and am. Nothing I've said is hard to understand. All I feel deeper still, and always will. All this love is for you. Every note that I play, every word I might say, every melody I feel are only for you and your appeal. Every page that I write, every day of my life would not be filled without the things that my love for you now brings. For you I make a promise of fidelity, now and for eternity. No one could replace this love for you. I'll take your hand and heart and everything, and add to them a wedding ring. 'Cause this life is no good alone. Since we become one, you're all I've known. If this feeling should leave, I'd die. And here's why: all I am is for you. Everything I do now makes sense. All roads end, and all I do is for you, only for you. You're watching Time to Talk with R.G. Holloman on GRTV. Welcome back to Time to Talk with R.G. Holloman. Here's R.G.
Hi, this is Time to Talk. I'm R.G. Holloman, and today is February 10th, 2016, and Valentine's Day is coming up on Sunday, right?
On Sunday.
Okay, it's coming up on Sunday, and we have our Valentine's special today. We had Mr. and Mrs. Beamer, Alan and Mary Beth Beamer in the first half of our show, and it was just beautiful seeing and sharing their love story, and we want to wish them a very happy Valentine's Day. And they were talking about how they're living with Alzheimer's, and Mr. Beamer has Alzheimer's, but he shared beautifully his love story with his wife, and she shared hers with him. Theirs together. And we want to learn more about Alzheimer's, and that's why we've invited Joyce Spahn, who is the Regional Director of the Alzheimer's Association, which is located here in Grand Rapids. But do you serve the West Michigan area, Joyce?
We do. We cover 6 counties. The Alzheimer's Association is a national organization, so there are currently 2 chapters of the Alzheimer's Association in Michigan, the Greater Michigan chapter and the Great Lakes chapter, and which really is irrelevant to the general public, but it kind of defines some of the territories that we cover. So we have and I think you and I were talking earlier, we have an 800 number, and that number that we encourage folks to call is a smart number, so it will actually direct you to the Alzheimer's Association closest to you. So, but our regional office in Grand Rapids covers 6 counties over to the lakeshore.
Wonderful. We're so glad that you could come and be with us today. There's a lot of myths surrounding Alzheimer's.
There are.
First of all, tell us what Alzheimer's is.
Okay, well, I thank you for asking. A lot of times folks use the language interchangeably these days between dementia and Alzheimer's disease and things like that. And actually there's no disease called dementia. Dementia is an umbrella term that describes symptoms. So things like changes in a person's memory, the forgetfulness kinds of things. It also includes changes in a person's behavior, their mood, their personality sometimes, judgment, logic, ability to reason, all of those kinds of things which we use all day long. So those kinds of things are impacted as the disease process impacts the brain in different ways, because different parts of the brain do different things or help control different things. Alzheimer's disease is a specific cause of dementia. It accounts for about 70% of all the different kinds of dementia or different causes of dementia. And there are over 80 things that can cause dementia. Alzheimer's disease, like I mentioned, is number 1, but there are things like vascular dementia, which is a result of mini strokes or little lesions in the brain that occur from little TIAs or small blood vessels in the brain have broken or ruptured over a period of time. There's something called Lewy body dementia, which is also a disease process that impacts the brain cells and has some unique characteristics that make the person a little bit more vulnerable to things like falling or balance kinds of issues and some other kinds of things like that, a little bit more rigidity and instability walking. So there are a number of things, and I think with Mr. Beamer, one of the things that they talked about had to do, you heard them mention about his visual changes. And what was contributing to that, they consider, I was talking to Mrs. Beamer earlier, and because of his football playing, they think that may have had an impact on that because of the trauma to the brain. And so his symptoms early on were slightly different than sometimes what you see with traditional Alzheimer's disease, the course of it a little bit. There was actually some recent literature that I read today. There was a release that came out, and they're looking at some small studies right now that are actually looking like there may be some similar types of deposits or changes to the brain cell for trauma to the brain. I know that's had a lot of publicity lately with injuries where people have had contact sports.
Normally we associate Alzheimer's with older patients, but when is the typical, if there is such a thing as a typical age onset
there
for
is.
Alzheimer's?
Usually you see it occur a little bit later, usually around 80, 85. Statistically, by the time a person turns 65, it's about 1 in 8 chance. So 1 in 8 people will have signs and symptoms of Alzheimer's. By the time a person's 85, it's about 1 in 3. So as the person gets older, their risk factor increases. The number 1 risk factor is age. So oftentimes you'll see as someone starts to have some changes in, you're right, oftentimes it's more associated with an older person. There is something called younger onset, and I suspect that that's kind of where Mr. Beamer falls within that, where he's under or right around that, younger than 65 or in that ballpark age group. And so his was a little bit atypical, so to speak, in terms of the age of onset and things like that.
And we all forget things here and there, and then sometimes we worry. So when should you really start to worry about what you're forgetting?
Yes, there is some normal age-related kinds of memory changes, and I get that question a lot. I've been working in this field for about 35 years, so I get that a lot about, I keep forgetting where my keys are. Does that mean I have Alzheimer's? And usually I'll say, well, no, that means you're just not very good at keeping track of your keys, unless you forget that you have a car that goes with that, or a truck or something. Then that might be something for pause.
Yeah.
One of the things, to kind of give an example of some normal versus some abnormal changing kinds of things, one of the things that Mary Beth had mentioned was that her husband had put the groceries in somebody else's cart. So making the differentiation between where those kinds of things go. So if you're constantly using your keys, that's one thing. But if you start finding the keys in unusual places, like in the refrigerator, or maybe it looks like maybe they've been hidden, or things like that, where a person loses the ability to actually retrace your steps. And that's kind of one of the key things. So it's one thing to be able to kind of forget that you had something or did something altogether, but it's another thing when you can't find your keys and you can say, okay, where did I have them last, and kind of retrace your steps, because someone with a true memory disorder loses the ability to do that.
We're talking to Joy Spahn, Regional Director of the Alzheimer's Association of West Michigan. And we're here today talking about Alzheimer's, and we had Mr. and Mrs. Beamer here earlier. As you hear, Joy referred to Mr. Beamer, who has Alzheimer's, but they have just quite a beautiful love story and shared that with us. And we're sorry that our phones aren't working today, so that you could have wished Mr. and Mrs. Beamer a happy Valentine's Day and asked Joy some questions. So we apologize for that. We ran into some technical difficulties, so that's what happened with the phones. Joy is here telling us more about Alzheimer's because we want to become more aware, and this is something that we do need to be aware of because so many people are afraid, aren't they, Joy?
Oh, absolutely. It's actually the #1 feared disease by folks right now. And of the 6 leading causes of death, it's the only one of the 6 that has not seen a decrease in the number of deaths related to the disease. It's actually had about a 70% increase over the last few years, and that's primarily due to not as much research has gone into it. So we're really excited that there's more and more dollars now that are being allocated for that. But I mentioned earlier about how the biggest risk factor is age. Well, we have a whole lot of baby boomers, and I'm included in that, that just started turning 65 a couple of years ago. So if you think about that and push that out a few years, it's not going to be too many years before you're going to start, and it's already starting, seeing a huge increase in the number of folks that are falling victim to that disease. We're starting to get a lot more awareness about it, though, which I think is absolutely wonderful, and I certainly admire anybody that comes out and talks openly about the disease, because it's frequently kind of one of those hush-hush things.
Yeah.
For some reason, people think that that it's something that they want to be embarrassed about, or that they're cautious and concerned about sharing that information.
Or other people think you're going to catch
Absolutely,
it.
that's right. That's
and it's not something you're going to
no,
catch.
it's not contagious. It's
But
not something at all like that.
Yeah, and one thing I don't understand is how does Alzheimer's cause death?
As the disease progresses, it progressively destroys brain cells in the brain.
Okay.
So little by little, those brain cells are dying, and that's what causes some of those changes in behavior, changes in mood, changes in how a person interacts and functions in their day-to-day life. And as those gradually die, Eventually, the brain is destroyed and it begins to interfere later on in the later stages with involuntary kinds of things like breathing and all those kinds of things.
Okay,
It hits the
okay.
spinal cord. So a person can become vulnerable to things like pneumonia and things like that, like any other kind of terminal illness. But the underlying cause of those changes and that frailty is the result of the brain basically dying.
Okay. And what's the progression? I know everybody's different, but
Sure.
what's kind of the stages of Alzheimer's?
Sure. Well, one of the things that kind of complicates it even a little bit more is I mentioned there are a number of things that can cause dementia. Well, you can have co-occurring things that are causing dementia. So you could have something like an Alzheimer's disease and a vascular dementia that are co-occurring at the same time. So it makes sometimes diagnosis a little bit more challenging. But generally speaking, and the progression of those diseases are a little different from each other. So for an Alzheimer's type disease, you generally have a very gradual decline over a period of time. Frequently you'll hear folks, and Mary Beth even so, about how they really think that it started many years before that or several years before that. But it's generally not noticeable as much until it gets to a point where it's something unusual, is it? I always tell folks that there's, more often than not, there's this aha moment where they're often able to define or identify an event that says, that's just not right. I need to check that out. And more often than not, that's the case. But so in Alzheimer's type disease, the progression can take years. It can take up to 20 years. A person can have those symptoms, because often the disease process is generally going on before those aha moments or before those symptoms are evidence that show changes in a person's day-to-day kind of thing. So on an average, though, if you want to kind of cut to the chase, more often than not, it's around 8 to 10 years from the time a person gets a diagnosis. And again, that's an average, so you've got numbers on both sides of that average, some very short to very long. And sometimes changes in a person's cognition and their course of their disease is due to the type of disease that they have. So if someone has a vascular dementia that's related to some of that stroke activity, oftentimes you'll see more of a stair-step effect. So a person will decline and then they'll stabilize for a little while, and then you'll see another decline, and it's related to the type and the duration of the stroke activity and the severity of that.
We're talking to Joyce Spahn, who is the Regional Director of the Alzheimer's Association of West Michigan. What are the treatments, what treatments right now are available? Hopefully there'll be more research and even a cure later on. But
That's
there's
what
not
we're
a cure
hoping for.
now.
No,
But
there is not.
what are the treatments?
Well, there are some medications out there that are common. Probably the common names that folks are familiar with would be something like Aricept or Exelon. Another one is called Namenda, and those can be in different forms. The Aricept in that category of drug are generally used earlier in the disease process, and then Namenda, which is the drug name by that particular company, is one that's the only one that's out there right now that targets the middle stages of the disease. And oftentimes you'll see those combined as the disease progresses. The medications that are currently available are not disease-modifying drugs, so that means they don't actually change the course of the disease. They don't stop it and they don't slow it down. What they do is it helps the brain function a little bit better for a period of time. So it kind of
Like walking and talking and thinking?
It
and
can,
things
yes.
like that?
Some folks do well on it. Most folks that seem to be successful with them are started earlier in the disease process, so the earlier the better. But there are side effects like many other kinds of medications, and often it's problems with sleeping or GI problems and that sort of thing, and so those side effects are sometimes not able to be tolerated very, very well. And the medications are expensive, so some folks choose to use them, some not so much. because they feel if they're not going to change the actual outcome or the course of the disease or cure it, that's a personal decision on whether you want to proceed with that. One of the challenges with any of those medications is when to stop. And that's a decision, again, that families are faced with. Research-wise, it shows that about 6 months to a year, the effectiveness of those medications. Unfortunately, there's no way of knowing if they're working or not, because if the medications are stopped and a person sees a decline, by starting them up again, it's not going to bring that person up to the level that they were before.
Nice.
So families are concerned about stopping because they don't know what the outcome is going to be. So it's a difficult, there's no easy answers to this disease. But we're hoping that shortly there's a lot more research going on now, so we're really excited about that. We finally have some, our legislature is behind increasing the funding for research and finding some modifying types of drugs, hopefully a cure. What they're speculating is there's probably not going to be a one pill for all. It's going to be more like a cocktail, like what has been used with things like HIV and that sort of thing, where the medications are personalized to the person's condition and kind of streamlines to meet the specific needs of that person. So that's kind of what the research is showing now.
Okay. We're talking to Joyce Spahn, Regional Director of the Alzheimer's Association of West Michigan. Is Alzheimer's physically painful for the patient?
Not that I'm aware of. Not that I'm aware. I've not heard anyone describe it that way.
Okay.
I think if anything, it impacts the person's ability to kind of figure things out and problem solve. One of the things that I really liked about what Mary Beth was saying is about how much emphasis she put on the living with Alzheimer's, and that because this journey was difficult, they still had a lot of memories to make. And I think that that's an absolutely wonderful attitude.
Yes, it is.
In fact, I've talked to physicians about that because for the same reasons that we've talked about, that there's not any cure for it, there's no drug modifiers, you can't do surgery on it, all those kinds of things. Sometimes physicians don't know always what to do about that either, because their goal and their mission is to help folks. And when there's not a lot to be done, oftentimes they're not quite sure what to do either. So I've explained to the physicians, and they've been very receptive to that, about that period of time, that there's a whole lot of living that still has to be done between the time a person gets that diagnosis and the time that that person dies. And that family needs a whole lot of support, just exactly like that video that they produced, Mary Beth and her husband produced. That there needs to be education to the general public. There needs to be education to family and friends. Some of our educational programs that we provide through the Alzheimer's Association, we're even starting to get friends and family that attend those programs, so they know how to be helpful, that they know how to continue to interact and support those families that have that. We're actually very excited in the area because we have actually an initiative going on in Grand Rapids to make Grand Rapids the first dementia-friendly city in Michigan. And we're new, but there's a number of organizations, including the Area Agency on Aging, and a number of private and nonprofit organizations that are working very hard to move Grand Rapids forward. Our past mayor, Hartwell, was involved with that, so we're hoping our new mayor will be involved with that as well, in helping to educate the general public. We've already done a fair amount of education with attorneys and judges and transportation drivers. We have some training coming up with our Department of Adult Protective Services. We've had folks from first responders, so we've been out busy doing a lot of education to help our community be more aware of how to interact and to recognize some of those signs and symptoms, and to just be more compassionate and concerning about that to make our city even better than it is.
It's a wonderful work that you're doing. What advice would you give to spouses and partners and caretakers of people who have Alzheimer's?
First of all, I would say to start early to take care of yourself. Particularly with older caregivers, statistically, there's a lot of information out there that shows that some caregivers, many caregivers in fact, that are older caregivers actually die before the person that they're taking care of because of the stress related to that. Oftentimes you'll see changes in sleep habits, that mood lability, all of those kinds of things that progresses, and it changes, and it can change from moment to moment, so that being on call or being on demand and not always knowing what to expect from moment to moment as the disease progresses. So getting that support and that help. I always tell caregivers when I'm doing training with them, think about it if you were in an airplane and the flight attendant, as they're going through all the different kinds of things that you're supposed to do in an emergency, and when those air masks drops, how you're supposed to put that on yourself first, so that you can be helpful. That's right.
Else.
You cannot be helpful to somebody if you're dead. So, and I tell caregivers it's the same thing, that because the majority of folks with dementia are cared for at home. It's frequently, generally until the later stages, that families seek out residential support and care, which is a wonderful resource that we have here in this community too. But the reality is that the majority of folks are cared for at home. So seeking out and starting to take care of yourself early, because it's very easy to get into that attitude where nobody can take care of my person like me.
Right.
And
Then you
which
get
is true.
overwhelmed.
That's right, which is true.
Oh, yeah.
But you need to take care of yourself if you want to be a good caregiver, or the best caregiver that you can be. You need to have that mental and that physical break. Stay engaged as much as possible with socialization. We have our community is wealthy with resources. It really, truly is. Checking out things like adult day programs, or having someone come in a paid caregiver come in to give you some support. So take care of yourself is the best way to take care of your person.
And Mr. Beamer mentioned that he was so sad that people don't often come to visit him or kind of ignore him. What can others, family and friends and other people do who are not so just right there taking care of the person, but what can they do to be supportive of the person and maybe the person's caretaker?
Sure, you can do things, call on the phone if you can't stop by, drop a person a card or a little note, which is always nice because then the person can read that over and over again because it's new. But it also provides support to the person that's the caregiver. So those phone calls and those cards and letters and emails and little videos. We have FaceTime that's so easy right now. So keeping connected in that way. Yes.
Just don't ignore them.
Exactly. Just don't ignore them. And you can be there for 10 or 15 minutes. It doesn't mean that you're going to be there for hours. The relationship changes. It doesn't mean it's better or worse. It just means it changes, and being able to adapt to that.
Tell us about an event that you have coming up in March.
We have a number of educational things coming up. Starting actually next week, we have our Living with Alzheimer's for early stage, so folks, both caregivers and persons with a diagnosis, so if someone's interested in that. We do like to talk to the folks to make sure that it's a good match, because there are conversations about that. We have a program called Savvy Caregiver that's coming up in March. And that actually is a 6 weeks class, and I teach that class, and it covers pretty much from A to Z about the disease, as well as helps caregivers develop new skills for dealing with the changes that occur as the disease progresses. So it takes you from one stage of the disease to the next, and helps provide you with some tools on how to manage that in a proactive, in a way that makes you feel better.
And you have a website?
We do. We have a website, and all of our educational programs, we have them ongoing in all of our 6 counties, and that's alz.org. You can go on the map that pops up on that website, and that website itself has an amazing amount of information, anything you'd ever want to know. If you want to go directly to the Greater Michigan chapter, it's alz.org/GMC.
Joyce Swan, Regional Director for the Alzheimer's Association. Thank you so much
You're
for
very
being
welcome.
with
Thank
us
you.
on Time to Talk, and happy Valentine's Day.
Happy Valentine's to you.
And happy Valentine's Day to you. And we'll see you again in 2 weeks right here on Time to Talk.
But one day the sun came shining through. The rain had stopped and the skies were blue. And oh, what a revelation